Good afternoon, class. Today we are going to discuss how the American Revolutionary War affected the French Revolution. We're going to compare how events in one country can definitely have an impact in another. Please write down any questions that come up during the video and bring them to class ready to discuss. There are many factors that resulted in the people of France rising up. But since we just discussed the American Revolution, we are going to focus on one aspect of its international significance, or how it affected the rest of the world. France was greatly affected by the American Revolution, and here are some of the factors. France was going through political, financial, and social changes. They fought side by side with Americans against a repressive government in the American Revolution. The Declaration of Independence, U.S. Constitution, Bill of Rights, and other Enlightenment writings from America flowed into France. And there was also the influence of notable Americans, some present in France while some still in the U.S. France was involved in the 7 Years' War, and yes, the American Revolution. Through its involvement, the monarchy depleted the treasury. Many in French society began to question the monarchy for their decision-making and decadence in the face of such harsh economic times. The choice to fund these wars devastated the treasury, and many Frenchmen wanted to help return the monarchy to its former elite status. You have to understand that France used to be a world power, but they were losing their prestige and their status after losing these wars and after spending all of their money on wars. However, instead of listening to the people, the monarchy repressed them. The monarchy had been considered sovereign, which means that they had supreme power and authority that was not to be questioned, but this logic began to change. Another factor in France was socially class systems were changing, but we'll talk about that at a later time. In these pictures, you can see the French ships coming to help the Americans in the American Revolution. And over here we have a picture of King Louis. He was the king at the time the French Revolution started. France was a key factor in the American triumph over the repressive British government. The fact that French soldiers were in the U.S. fighting side by side with American soldiers for freedom provided much of the motivation for an uprising in France. They witnessed a people rising up against great tyrannical government, and not only rising up, but succeeding. Some of the things that they were fighting for was against the tyranny of the government. They were fighting for the inherent rights of man. They were fighting for the people as the sovereign power instead of the monarchy, which meant that people should rule. They were fighting for freedom, personal liberties, and representation in government. All of these factors became key ideals in the French Revolution and goals which the French people hoped to achieve. They also got many of these goals from the American Revolution. Not only did the French see Americans rise up against their government, they saw them succeed to victory. They now knew that a successful revolution was possible. They also saw how this new government was established with a guarantee of these rights. And in this picture, you can see this is the surrender of the British, and both French and American soldiers are present. Americans took the ideals that they had fought for and wrote them into the Declaration of Independence and later the Constitution to be given freely and uninhibited by the federal government, which means that they're entitled to these freedoms and that the government would be overstepping if it took away any of this power from the people. This quote is from the Declaration, but it shows an example of the influential language of the time and the stern belief in these ideals. I'm sure you've all heard it before. It's one of the most famous quotes in the English language. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We talked about how the Enlightenment influenced the American Revolution, and the same Enlightenment was taking place in France. The same writings that were being read in America and that had provided some of the motivation for revolution were making their way to France, such as Thomas Paine's Common Sense and the Federalist Papers, which we have previously discussed in class. They were exposed to the ideals that encouraged an American Revolution, and many French people believed that they were entitled to the same rights written in the U.S. Constitution and Bill of Rights. And with the example of the United States victory, they believed it was entirely possible. While the French soldiers were fighting in America, they were influenced by many American leaders. They recounted stories of George Washington, you can see him here, a new American hero who was commander-in-chief of the Continental Army, but was also from a notable British family. Yet he had a revolutionary spirit and fought against his homeland and for the Republic. After the Revolution, French society began to strive for everything American, whether it was writings, which we already talked about, or Americans themselves. Benjamin Franklin, you can see him right here with his coonskin hat, was the American ambassador to France and one of the most sought-after men in French society. He became a walking advertisement for American ideals and politics. Having one of the founding fathers of America's new government in France fed the French thirst for knowledge and the drive for revolution. All of these factors changed the dynamic of French society. The people no longer just wanted rules and standards to live by. They wanted to take part in the decision-making process and now had the tools and knowledge of how to make this happen. With the American example of how to create a society ruled by people, the French knew this was an achievable goal. So now that we've covered that, here's a couple of things I want you guys to think about. Think about what you just saw, and I want you to come to class with a list of 3 ways the American Revolution affected the French Revolution, and list 3 ideals that both revolutions were fighting for, things that they both had in common. Also bring with you any of the questions that arose during this video. In class, just so you guys have an idea of what we're going to do, you will be creating a propaganda poster encouraging revolution in France based on something learned from the American Revolution. So I hope this covers what you need to know, and again, please come prepared with any questions that arose during the presentation. See you tomorrow.